My name is Victoria Bennett. I'm 42 years old. And exactly 3 weeks before my daughter's wedding, I discovered my husband had been stealing from me for 8 years. It started with a phone call from my financial advisor. "Victoria," he said, his voice careful, "I need you to come in this afternoon. There's something unusual with your trust fund statements." I was standing in my kitchen in suburban Dallas, stirring a pot of chicken soup, when those words changed everything. "What kind of unusual?" I asked, turning down the burner. "Large withdrawals. Over the past several years, authorized under a power of attorney I wasn't aware you'd granted." My hand tightened around the wooden spoon. "I haven't granted any power of attorney to anyone except my husband, Robert, and only for joint accounts." There was a long pause on the other end. "Victoria, the power of attorney was signed by you 8 years ago. It gives Robert full authority over your separate property, including the trust fund your grandmother left you." I felt the room tilt slightly. "That's not possible. I never signed that." "Signature looks authentic. The document was notarized, and the withdrawals began 6 months after you signed it." Set the spoon down on the counter. My grandmother's trust fund wasn't enormous, but it was significant. $200,000 when she passed, meant to be my safety net, my never depend on anyone money. Robert had always respected that, or so I thought. "Can you email me the documents?" I asked, keeping my voice steady. "Already done, Victoria. I'm so sorry." After I hung up, I stood in my kitchen for a long time, listening to the soup bubble on the stove. Outside, our golden retriever Buster was chasing a squirrel across the lawn. Normal life, continuing normally. Inside, my world was quietly fracturing. Before I tell you what I found in those documents, and what happened when I confronted my husband, let me ask you, what time is it where you are right now? Where are you watching from? And have you ever discovered that someone you trusted completely had been lying to you for years? I'm asking because I need to know I'm not alone in this. My name is Victoria Bennett, and this is the story of how my husband of 20 years stole from me, lied to me, and tried to turn my own daughter against me. But it's also the story of how I fought back. Let me give you some context, because to understand why this hurts so much, you need to understand my family. Robert and I met in college at UT Austin. He was studying business, I was studying education. We were both 20, both idealistic, both convinced we'd found our soulmate. We married 2 years after graduation, bought a small house in Plano, and built what I thought was a solid, honest life together. Robert started his own financial consulting firm. I taught third grade at an elementary school in Frisco. We had Sophie, our daughter, 3 years after we married. We struggled sometimes. Money was tight in the early years, but we never lied to each other. Or so I believed. My grandmother, Alina, passed away 8 years ago. She was the one who taught me to never depend on anyone else for my financial security. "Men come and go, sweetheart," she'd told me when I was 16. "But money you control yourself. That's always yours." She left me that trust fund with very specific instructions. It was mine alone, not marital property, not to be touched by anyone but me. The trustee was my attorney, David Morrison. Robert couldn't access it without my explicit permission, or so I thought. I drove to my attorney's office that same afternoon. David was in his 60s, sharp, thorough, and had been handling my family's legal matters for 30 years. He looked genuinely disturbed when I showed him the email from my financial advisor. "Victoria," he said, adjusting his glasses, "I need to pull the original file." He disappeared into his records room for 20 minutes. When he came back, he was carrying a manila folder that looked thin and innocent. But when he opened it, I saw the signature at the bottom of the page. It looked like mine. The loops, the slant, the way I crossed my T's. But I knew with absolute certainty that I had never signed that document. "David," I said quietly, "I didn't sign this." He looked at me carefully. "Are you certain?" "Certain." He sat back in his chair. "This is forgery, Victoria, criminal forgery, if Robert signed your name without your knowledge. He's been stealing from me for 8 years. The words hung in the air between us. My husband, the man I'd shared my life with, the man I'd trusted with everything, had been systematically stealing from me. David pulled out a legal pad. "We need to document everything. How much is missing?" I closed my eyes. "I don't know yet, but I'm going to find out." That evening, I went home and made dinner like nothing was wrong. Robert walked in at 6:30, kissed me on the cheek, and asked about my day. I told him about the third graders who'd learned to multiply. He told me about a new client he'd landed. We ate grilled chicken and roasted vegetables. We watched the news. We went to bed at 10:30, and all the while I was counting counting the lies, counting the years, counting the money he'd stolen. The next morning, while Robert was in the shower, I logged into our joint accounts. I'd never been the one to manage the finances. Robert handled all of that. "You're too busy with teaching," he'd say. "Let me worry about the money." I'd always thought it was considerate. Now I realized it was control. I started with the trust fund statements. Over 8 years, Robert had withdrawn $35,000 in year 1, $28,000 in year 2, $42,000 in year 3, $31,000 in year 4, $38,000 in year 5, $29,000 in year 6, $44,000 in year 7, $33,000 in year 8 total, $280,000, more than the original amount. He drained it completely. I took screenshots of everything. Then I started looking at our joint accounts. And that's when I found something even worse. 6 months ago, Robert had opened a separate business account. According to the statements, he'd transferred $150,000 from our joint savings into this account. The description read, "Business Expansion Capital," but his business hadn't expanded. He still had the same office, the same 3 employees, the same client base. So where had the money gone? I dug deeper. I pulled credit card statements, loan documents, tax returns. And slowly a pattern emerged. Robert wasn't just stealing from me. He was stealing from us. Over the past 3 years, he'd taken out 4 separate loans against our home equity. Total amount, $320,000. I hadn't signed any of those documents, but somehow they'd all been approved. I sat at my kitchen table, surrounded by papers, feeling like I was drowning. My husband hadn't just stolen my grandmother's money. He'd been systematically looting our entire financial life, and I'd been too trusting to notice. My phone rang. It was Sophie. "Mom, are you excited? 3 weeks until the wedding." I forced enthusiasm into my voice. "Of course, sweetheart, I can't wait." Robert's being so helpful with the final payments. "He's been working with the venue and the caterer. You're so lucky to have him." The words hit me like a punch to the stomach. "Sophie, has Robert been handling all the wedding finances?" "Yeah, mostly. You know how he is with money. He says you're too emotional about the details." I closed my eyes. Of course, even my daughter's wedding was being used as cover for his theft. "Mom, you okay?" "I'm fine, baby, just tired. Teaching has been exhausting lately." After I hung up, I called David. "I need to meet with you again today." "What's wrong?" I found more, much more. We met at his office at 2 o'clock. I brought boxes of documents. David spent 3 hours reviewing everything while I sat across from him, watching his expression grow darker with each page. "Victoria," he finally said, "this isn't just forgery. This is a coordinated financial fraud scheme. Robert has been stealing from you, from your joint accounts, and now from your daughter's wedding fund. How do we stop him? We need to freeze all accounts immediately. We need to file a police report for forgery and fraud. And we need to do it before the wedding, or he'll have access to Sophie's wedding funds too." I nodded. "Do it." But David hesitated. "Victoria, are you prepared for what this will do to your family? Sophie's wedding is in 3 weeks. If we do this now, then she'll know the truth before she walks down the aisle. I won't let her marry into a family built on lies." David studied my face. "You're certain?" "I've never been more certain of anything." He picked up the phone. "I'll call the bank. You should call Sophie." That was the hardest phone call I've ever made. My daughter answered on the second ring, cheerful and excited. "Mom, did you talk to Robert about the seating chart?" "Sophie, we need to talk. Can you come over tonight?" Her tone changed immediately. "Is everything okay?" "No, baby, everything is not okay." She arrived at 7 o'clock, her face pale with worry. I led her to the living room where I'd spread out the documents on the coffee table. "Mom, what is all this?" "Sit down, Sophie." She sat. I handed her the trust fund statements first. She read them silently, her brow furrowed. "Don't understand." "Robert's been withdrawing from your trust fund for 8 years without my knowledge or permission." Her eyes widened. That's illegal. It's forgery." I handed her the home equity loan documents next. She read those more slowly, shaking her head. "These are signed by you," she said. "Not my signature." "Then who?" She looked up at me and I saw the moment of realization. Robert." She sat back, stunned. "But why? Where did the money go?" "That's what we're trying to figure out." I showed her the business account statements, the $150,000 transfer, the mysterious withdrawals that didn't match any business expenses. Sophie's hands started shaking. "Mom, the wedding, the venue deposit, the caterer, the photographer. Robert said he was handling all the payments. He said not to worry about it." My heart broke for her. "Sophie, how much has he taken from the wedding fund?" I didn't want to tell her, but she deserved the truth. According to these statements, about $80,000. She stared at me. 80,000, but the wedding only cost 60. I know. Then where did the other 20 go? I didn't have an answer for that, but I was going to find out. Sophie stood up abruptly. I need to call him. I need to ask him. No, I grabbed her hand. Not yet. We need to be strategic about this. If we confront him now, he'll have time to hide more money, destroy evidence, lie his way out of it. Then what do? We let the wedding happen. We let him think he's gotten away with it. And then after you're married, we hit him with everything. Sophie looked horrified. You want me to marry into this, to pretend everything is fine? I want you to have your wedding day, but I also want justice. And right now, those two things can't happen at the same time. She sat back down, tears in her eyes. Mom, what if he's done this before? What if there's more we don't know about? That was the question I'd been avoiding. But now, with Sophie asking it, I couldn't run from it anymore. Then we find out, I said. We find out everything. The next 2 weeks, I lived a double life. By day, I was the excited mother of the bride, helping with last-minute wedding details, attending rehearsals, smiling for photographs. By night, I was a detective, poring over financial records, meeting with David, gathering evidence. And slowly, the full picture emerged. Robert hadn't just been stealing from me. He'd been stealing from everyone. David discovered that Robert had opened 5 separate credit cards in my name over the past 4 years. Total debt, $87,000. I hadn't applied for any of them. I hadn't received any of the cards, but the applications had my signature. We found 3 personal loans Robert had taken out using our home as collateral. Total, $210,000. Again, I hadn't signed any of those documents, and then David found something that made my blood run cold. Victoria, he said, his voice grave, I think Robert has been doing this to other people too. What do you mean? I've been reviewing his business client files. Several of them have complained about missing funds, unauthorized withdrawals, suspicious transactions. They all thought it was bank errors. They all trusted Robert to fix it. Many clients? 7 that I can confirm. Total amount stolen, approximately $400,000. I felt like I was going to be sick. My husband wasn't just a thief, he was a con artist, a predator, and I'd been his cover for 20 years. David, we have to go to the police, all of this, everything. Agree. But we need to time it carefully. If we act before the wedding, Sophie gets hurt. If we wait too long, Robert might flee with the money. We decided on a plan. We'd let the wedding happen. We'd let Robert think he'd succeeded. And then, 48 hours after Sophie's wedding, we'd hit him with everything. The police report, the civil lawsuit, the criminal charges, but 3 days before the wedding, something unexpected happened. Robert came home early from work. I was sitting at the kitchen table reviewing bank statements when I heard the front door open. He called out. I quickly closed the folder. In the kitchen, he walked in, loosening his tie. I left some documents at home. Do you know where I put the Henderson file? Did you check your briefcase? He frowned. I thought I brought it home. As he searched, I watched him carefully. This man I'd shared my life with. This man who'd held me when I cried, who'd danced with me at our anniversary parties, who'd walked Sophie down the aisle in 3 days. This man was a stranger. Victoria, he said, turning to face me, can I ask you something? Of course. You've been acting strange lately. Distant. Is everything okay? I looked him straight in the eyes. Everything is fine, Robert. He studied my face for a long moment. Then he nodded. Okay, I want this wedding to be perfect for Sophie. You know how important that is to me. I know. He leaned down and kissed my forehead. I love you, Victoria. And in that moment, I realized something terrible. He knew. He knew that I knew, and he was still lying to my face. Love you too, Robert, I said. It was the last lie I'd ever tell him. The wedding day arrived. Sophie looked breathtaking in her white gown, her hair swept up, her smile radiant. Robert walked her down the aisle with tears in his eyes, and I watched him play the devoted father, the proud parent, the loving husband. And I waited. The ceremony was beautiful. The reception was elegant. The toasts were heartfelt, and through it all, Robert played his part perfectly. He danced with Sophie. He hugged me. He smiled for photographs. He was the picture of a successful, loving family man, but I had the evidence. I had the signatures. I had the bank statements. I had the truth. And in 48 hours, I was going to destroy him. The newlyweds left for their honeymoon on Sunday evening. Robert and I returned to our empty house on Sunday night. We sat in the living room, drinking wine, not speaking. Finally, Robert broke the silence. Victoria, we need to talk. Set my glass down. Yes, we do. He turned to face me. I know you've been looking into the finances. I know you've been meeting with David Morrison. My blood ran cold. How did you? I have my sources. For a moment, neither of us spoke. Then Robert did something I never expected. He smiled. Victoria, he said softly, do you really think I'd let you destroy everything we've built? Everything you've stolen, you mean? His smile didn't fade. Semantics. He reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out an envelope. He handed it to me. Inside was a single sheet of paper, a legal document, and at the bottom, my signature. What is this? I asked, though I already knew. A power of attorney, signed by you 3 days ago, giving me full authority over all your assets, including any legal actions you might take against me. I stared at the signature. It looked exactly like mine. You forged this. Or did you sign it and forget? You've been under a lot of stress lately. I stood up abruptly. I didn't sign this. You certain? Because David Morrison witnessed it. He can testify that you signed it voluntarily. My world tilted. David would never. David is a smart man. He knows what's good for him. I felt like I was trapped in a nightmare. My attorney, my trusted advisor. Had he betrayed me too? As if reading my mind, Robert pulled out his phone. He tapped the screen and held it up. It was a video. David Morrison, sitting in his office, speaking directly to the camera. I, David Morrison, attorney at law, do hereby attest that Victoria Bennett signed this power of attorney document voluntarily and of her own free will in my presence on this date. The video continued. But I'd heard enough. You set me up, I whispered. I protected myself. There's a difference. I grabbed my purse. I'm going to the police. Robert didn't try to stop me. He just smiled. Go ahead, he said. But remember, you signed that power of attorney. You authorized everything I did. Without it, I'm just a helpful husband managing the finances. With it, I'm your legal representative. He stood up and walked toward me. Victoria, he said softly, you can fight this. You can hire another attorney, file a lawsuit, try to prove forgery, but it'll take years. It'll cost hundreds of thousands of dollars, and you'll probably lose. He paused. Or you can accept the reality. Let the power of attorney stand. Let me continue managing the finances, and in return, I'll make sure you're taken care of. You'll never want for anything. I looked at this man, this monster, and I realized something. He'd won. He'd stolen from me, lied to me, manipulated everyone around me, and he'd won. But he'd made one mistake. He'd underestimated me. Think about it, I said. He smiled. That's my girl. I went upstairs to bed. Robert stayed downstairs, drinking wine, celebrating his victory, but I wasn't defeated. I was just getting started, because Robert had forgotten one thing. I was a teacher. I'd spent 20 years teaching third graders how to solve problems, how to think critically, how to find solutions, and I was about to teach my husband the most important lesson of his life. The next morning, I drove to the police station. I filed a report for forgery, fraud, and identity theft. I provided all the evidence. The bank statements, the loan documents, the credit card applications. The detective assigned to my case was a woman named Detective Sarah Chen. She was in her 40s, sharp, thorough, and had zero tolerance for financial crimes. Bennett, she said, reviewing the documents, this is a complex case, but it's also very clear. Your husband has been stealing from you for years. Also has a forged power of attorney, and my attorney witnessed it. Detective Chen frowned. That complicates things, but it doesn't make it legal. If you didn't sign it, it's still forgery. How do we prove I didn't sign it? Handwriting analysis. We'll get samples of your signature from before the alleged signing. We'll compare them, and if they don't match. Robert goes to jail, she nodded. Robert goes to jail. For the next 3 months, I worked with Detective Chen and a new attorney, Jennifer Walsh, who specialized in financial fraud cases. We gathered evidence. We interviewed Robert's clients. We subpoenaed bank records. We built a case that was airtight. And then, 4 months after Sophie's wedding, the arrest warrant was issued. Robert was arrested at his office on a Tuesday morning. The news spread quickly. His business partners resigned. His clients fled. His reputation was destroyed. But the worst part for Robert, Sophie found out. She called me that same day, crying. Mom, is it true? Did Robert really? Yes, baby, it's true. How long has this been going on? 8 years. 8 years, and you didn't tell me. I wanted you to have your wedding day. I didn't want to ruin it. There was a long silence. Then Sophie said, you should have told me. I could have stopped it. I could have protected me. Baby, I had to protect myself. And I did. Trial lasted 6 weeks. Robert pleaded not guilty. He claimed I'd signed all the documents voluntarily. He claimed I was mentally unstable. He claimed I was trying to destroy him out of spite, but the evidence was overwhelming. The handwriting analysis proved I hadn't signed the power of attorney. The bank records showed the systematic theft. The client testimonies revealed the pattern of fraud. And then the final blow. Jennifer discovered that Robert had been using a signature stamp to forge my signature. He'd had it made 3 years ago by a company in Houston. The receipt was found in his office safe. Game over. The jury deliberated for 4 hours. When they came back, the verdict was unanimous. Guilty on all counts. Robert was sentenced to 12 years in federal prison. He was ordered to pay restitution, $1.2 million to me, $400,000 to his clients, and $150,000 in fines. He lost everything. His business, his freedom, his family. Sophie and I visited him in prison once, 6 months after his sentencing. He looked smaller, older, defeated. "I'm sorry," he said, his voice hollow. "I'm so sorry. I didn't forgive him, not then, maybe not ever, but I did say one thing." "Robert," I said, "you taught me something important. You taught me that trust has to be earned, and once it's broken, it can't be fixed with apologies." He nodded. "I understand," I said. "I don't think you do, because if you understood, you never would have done this in the first place." Sophie and I left the prison that day, and we never went back. 5 years later, I'm sitting in my house in Dallas, drinking coffee, watching the sunrise. Sophie is married to a wonderful man named James, who treats her with respect and honesty. They have 2 children, my grandchildren, who I spoil rotten. I still teach 3rd grade. I still love my job. And I still believe in the power of education to change lives. But I also believe in something else now. I believe in the power of truth, of justice, of standing up for yourself even when it's hard, even when it hurts, even when it means destroying the life you've built. Because sometimes the only way to rebuild is to tear everything down first. And sometimes the greatest act of love isn't forgiveness. It's accountability. So if you're watching this and you suspect someone you trust is lying to you, stealing from you, or hurting you, don't ignore it. Don't make excuses. Don't protect them. Protect yourself. Gather the evidence. Find the truth. And when you're ready, hit them with everything you've got, because you deserve better. You deserve honesty. You deserve respect. And you sure as hell deserve someone who doesn't steal from you. Thank you for listening to my story. And remember, the truth will set you free. But first, it'll make you fight. I'll see you in the next one.